Good evening and welcome again to another issue, another segment of Ideas at Work and Beyond. What I was struck by this week were the springing forth of a yearning for freedom and self-determination that we saw in the nation of Iran. Iran is supposedly a democracy, but I think that they've seen next door in Iraq a democracy at work. A democracy where people are actually allowed to vote for who's going to represent them in their country. With that next door, we're seeing a rebirth of freedom, or at least electoral freedom, in the nation of Iran. When you see the election that went forth there and the opposition party overwhelmingly voting against the anti-American party that was in office, and you see the people walking in the streets and protesting, literally risking their lives to make their voices heard, I was touched by it. Now, does this mean there will be no further struggles in the Middle East? Does this mean that there will be peace and harmony? I don't know. From what I understand, this new administration, if the election is allowed to go forth and there's going to be some sort of recount, is probably going to move forward with their nuclear policies and seeking nuclear weapons, and is probably going to be as anti-Israel as the previous one. But what we've seen, Governor Palin may not know exactly what the Bush Doctrine was, but I feel like I have a handle on it. The Bush Doctrine was, first of all, that we would attack terrorism wherever we find it, and if there's any nation state that supports terrorism, we'll attack those states as well. That was the Bush policy. It also sought to implement or put in democratic reforms in the Middle East, and that's what we saw in Iraq, and that's what we're beginning to see in Afghanistan. And if, looking back historically, we see the rebirth of freedom in the nation of Iran, and the people who have seen in countries around them how democracies can work, I think that the historians might be a little bit kinder to our former President Bush than he's experienced of late. So let's keep an eye on Iran. Let's keep the pressure on. I'd like to see a more thorough response from President Obama in support of those students we see in the street that are literally risking their lives to express their freedom. This evening, we are going to be joined by State Senator Toni Boucher, because what's going on right now in Connecticut, in Hartford, is really a budget battle royale. Basically, they've debated this thing since February. I have some old newspaper articles dated back to February 1, where you see that the deficit they were projecting for this year was $1.1 billion, with a B, billion dollars. That has now ballooned to $1.4 billion deficit for this year. They're projecting for next year a $3.1 billion budget deficit, and for the following year a $4.7 billion deficit. So the deficits are piling up, and there's fundamentally two different approaches to this problem. The one approach that has been put forth by the governor is that of cutting spending, cutting out bloated programs. They're actually talking about trimming bloated bureaucracies, about eliminating nearly 24 agencies and commissions in Hartford, also getting money from the federal stimulus package. But essentially, Governor Rell and the remnant of Republican legislators that are in the House and in the State Senate, one of which will be joining us this evening, their approach is to trim back the state budget in Connecticut, hold the line on taxes, and still maintain funding for education and relief to the towns. That's their basic program. The program on the other side, by the Democrats, are calling for $3.3 billion in new tax increases. We've talked over and over on this show how our Tax Freedom Day, that's the day that we as taxpayers can begin to start thinking in terms of this money is going to be ours. We don't have to give it away in state and federal taxes. In Connecticut, our State Freedom Day is something like June 10th. That means that all this year so far we have done nothing but work to pay our federal, state and local taxes. The battle royale for the budget that we have going on right now in Hartford, you have two sides. One side says, let's limit state government, let's cut back on these bloated bureaucracies, and let's cut them back. The other side is saying, no cuts. What we need to do is raise $3.3 billion in new taxes to put yet more burden on the taxpayers. And by the way, someone I can remember back, this is going back for some of you youngsters in the audience, but when Lowell Weichert was the governor, he said that raising taxes during a recession was like throwing gasoline on a fire. And that's the absolute worst thing that can be done. That's what we're seeing right now in Hartford. And I was talking to someone earlier today, and they said, the average citizen gets up, he's got to get ready for work, he's got to drive 45 minutes, an hour or so to work. He works 8 to 10 hours a day. He drives back, picks up his kids at school, takes them to dance or karate or art school or does something, comes home, tries to have a little bit of dinner, sit down, watch a little bit of American Idol or something on TV, goes to bed, gets up, and does it all over again. They don't have time to think about what's going on. But hopefully on a rainy night, you've tuned into Ideas at Work and Beyond tonight, because we're delighted to have State Senator Toni Boucher, who will be joining us in a minute. But before we go to that, we're going to have Jim Masters and Austin Greenfield back. And actually, we're not going to have Jim Masters and Austin Greenfield just now. We're going to have a delightful public service announcement. And this is something that we've worked on for a long time, and we're delighted to bring you this public service announcement. But stay tuned, because later in the program we will have Jim Masters and Austin Greenfield here with the news and weather, a new and improved and reconfigured. They're tanned, rested, and ready, and they will be bringing you the news and weather, and we're also going to have State Senator Toni Boucher. So stay right there, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Ideas at Work and Beyond. It does my heart good to see those strapping young men in their machines, the United States Marine, Semper Fi. If you see a Marine, say Semper Fi. He'll know exactly what you're talking about. It's something like Latin for always faithful. Without any further ado, State Senator Toni Boucher, I just want to personally thank you very much for coming. I talked to you earlier today. The battle royale up in Hartford is going on. You're in the thick of things.
We are.
You actually have a business to run yourself.
Exactly.
A lot of people don't know that state senator, this is not a full-time job.
Right.
This isn't a $200,000 gig with a great dental plan. This is essentially a part-time job, but you're working more than that.
So it is. We're a citizen legislature in Connecticut, and for that reason, most of us have full-time careers and jobs. It brings the real world to bear oftentimes, and in our real world, we're cutting back. We're cutting back 10, 20% in our budgets. People aren't getting raises. They're not getting bonuses. In many cases, in fact, their salaries are being cut, and I think that's what the real world is experiencing, and it's sometimes difficult for me to get the veto-proof majority in the House and Senate to understand that.
By the veto-proof majority, and I don't mean to be blatantly partisan, but by the veto-proof majority, you're talking essentially about the Democratic Party in Hartford that have veto-proof majorities both in the House and the Senate.
That's correct. That's not always has been the case. It has been the case that for over 30 years they have had a majority in both the House and Senate. But in the past, they've had not enough of a margin to overturn any veto the governor might have. And in that eventuality, they are really forced to come to the table and compromise. So right now, most people don't know that out in the listening audience, that the governor can propose a budget, but you know, she can't decide the budget. She has to rely on the decision-making powers of the House and Senate of our legislature. And right now, that veto-proof majority, the only plan they have on the table, because they didn't like the governor's plan, their plan made it through the Appropriations Committee and the Finance Committee, and it was, as you said before, a $3.3 billion tax increase.
To me, that's a stunning.
It's a stunning number. It is. But there's a resistance, as you said, to reducing costs, to cutting back, to consolidating agencies. We have a lot of opportunity for change there. But they can't get. But the good news is that they can't get enough members of their own party to agree to that $3.3 billion. So right now, they're really stymied. They aren't making any progress or movement. And the governor cannot decide this, as we said. The only alternative she has, if at the end of June 30th, which is the end of the state's fiscal year, we start a new year, July 1, she has to run the state by executive order, week after week, month after month.
It's a heck of a way to run a railroad. By the way, the phone number here is 792-4101. 792-4101. This is live television. This is interactive. You have the state senator right here. Caller, you're on the air.
Oh, hi. Senator Boucher, how you doing?
Yes, how are you tonight? I hope you're keeping dry.
Why don't the Republicans walk through all these agencies, videotape these 5,000 police found doing nothing? We really need a Department of Bureau of Indian Affairs in this type of economy. We really need a commission on the permanent status of women in this type of economy. There's all these phony agencies, dozens and dozens and hundreds of police found doing little or nothing.
I thank you for the call. We're having a little bit of trouble.
Why do they want to tax us when you have all these phony jobs?
Well, you're obviously following this carefully.
Thanks for calling. We'll go ahead on that.
Yeah. Well, he obviously has been paying attention.
Yeah.
Because, in fact, he's absolutely correct. We have a number of agencies that do nothing, or commissions that do nothing but have senior staff that lobby the legislature on issues that, by the way, there are state agencies already employed to do the very things that they are doing as well.
The governor is calling for the elimination of 24 agencies and commissions.
That's correct. And in fact, there could be even another 10 that could be consolidated, but there's not the political will to do that.
Okay, and the other thing she was talking about doing, or is in her proposal, is rolling back spending and the activity of government to 2007 levels.
Correct.
Okay, cut bloated bureaucracies, have early retirement for 3,000 to 4,000 state employees.
Yes, yes.
Okay, and then also have social services, have community providers to take care of things like social services, which would cost somewhere in the neighborhood of 37 cents per dollar that the state is spending on those things.
You can't imagine how much more expensive it is to run it through the state agencies. And we do a very good job. Ability Beyond Disability, the STAR program, has services for the disabled that they do at a fraction of the cost, and they do it extremely well. We see that at the Yukon Health Center. Those employees are state employees, and that health center is always in the red. And in order for them to consolidate or maybe to merge with, say, St. Francis Hospital or Hartford Hospital, that cannot be done because their cost structure is so much higher. They can't consolidate. In fact, if those hospitals were to run with that cost structure, they would be out of business. So there's no way to merge them. Okay. That's a good example of that.
All right. Rob Emanuel at the federal level has said something, and he's been criticized from it. He says it would be a shame to waste this crisis. Now, would it be fair to say that the governor is taking a look at this, what she constantly refers to as the bloated state budget, or the bloated... trim the bloated bureaucracy. I agree with that. I agree with that. I mean, if you've ever gone to the Department of Motor Vehicle, which our Department of Motor Vehicle are fine, appreciate all their work, but still, you get a sense anytime you're dealing with the government that it's not run smoothly, it's not run efficiently, and now we've got a situation where we just can't afford it. You know, I guess in the salad days when the money's coming in on state revenues, maybe we could afford some of this, but it's at this point. you just can't add fuel to the fire, add yet more increased taxes on this bloated bureaucracy. So I believe that the governor is taking the right position in trying to cut this. What is the likelihood that it's going to work?
Well, Marty, first we should absolutely state that we have some really fine state employees that are very highly skilled in the profession that they're involved in our Department of Environmental Protection. We have some actually very good engineers in the Department of Transportation. We have some in the insurance department and so on. So that being said, the prospects of us to reduce this is exactly the sticking point that we have going on right now, that tug of war, if you will. Although, I might add that it's interesting that we're in this tug of war when, as I said before, there's a veto-proof majority in the House and Senate. In other words, they can run with their own budget at any time. They can run it today, they can run it tomorrow in special session. They could have run it 2 months ago. And that's what is quite the dilemma here, because instead, some of the leadership has gone from town to point out, oh, the terrible cuts that the governor is proposing and how terrible that would be for the state, when in fact, they control the agenda right now.
Yeah. So 2 quick questions along those lines. One has to do with the Quinnipiac poll, a very respected polling agency that has done a survey of the voters in Connecticut. And then the other issue is this $3.3 billion increase in taxes that they're proposing. Do they just not have the political guts or will to bring it to a vote? And tell us a little bit about how the Republicans actually brought this to a vote on the Senate floor.
That's true.
And it was voted down, and it's their budget.
It did pass in committee.
Okay.
They control as chairs of both the finance and the appropriations. Appropriations is the spending side, the finance is the taxing side. And they did bring those to a vote, and it passed through a straight party line vote. But you're right, they didn't have the votes to actually pass it in the House and Senate. But that proposal was finally, in frustration, brought to a vote by the other side, and it did go down handily. In fact, in the Senate, it went down 36-0. So no one voted for the proposal. So they really have to roll up their sleeves, and they should roll up their sleeves like the 7 towns in our district. All of our towns have met their budget deadlines. They have rolled up their sleeves. They've done the hard work that they needed to do. They should be recognized and commended for that, because they see the reality of what is out there, and they understand what the public is going through. But unfortunately, they're also held hostage to the inaction on the part of the state government, because they are looking to see what numbers are they going to get from the state with regards to their road program, to their school allotments, and so forth for next year. And I think that it's not responsible to go past a deadline. It's time to do something now when they have the ability to do so.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I think at the local level, I know a little bit about the town of Ridgefield, but I have to take my hat off to the first selectman there and also the Board of Ed. They really took a sharp pencil to their budgets. The Board of Ed budget this year was a 1% increase over last year, a 1%.
Absolutely.
And historically, that's, in anyone's memory, it has not been that small of an increase. The town side, we actually, from year to year, cut the budget 1%.
Exactly. That's happened in every town that I visit. They have done the same thing. It's been a 0% increase, a 1% increase, or even a minus increase. Quite frankly, it is amazing the hard work that they've done. At the state level, we've had increases in the neighborhood of 5, 6, 8 to 9% year to year. And in days, like you said, when we had surplus years, that was absorbed. But now that we are in a negative territory, big deficits, and one of the big reasons for that, quite frankly, Marty, is not only the spending is not really realistic compared to what the revenues are coming in, but our economy is no longer diverse. Our economy is so dependent on financial services, the investment community, and as the fortunes of Wall Street go up, they also go down, and so do our state revenues.
Let me, because I know you had the number. I was at that meeting with you and State Representative John Fry, where you talked about the total budget, or the total tax revenues that come in Connecticut in a year. What number is that?
Well, you're talking about in the neighborhood of $18 billion.
Okay, so about
and also, I might add, that is our entire budget for a particular year.
Okay, so
in that number, okay, you have to add also that a percentage of that, almost 18%, comes from government grants as well. But I might add that that is also your tax dollar. So often we say, well, we're getting this from the federal government, and we're going to be great because the federal
money's coming. Don't worry.
People must recognize that that is their money.
Yeah.
That is the federal tax revenue you're paying, and also then the state revenue.
Okay, I want to break down that number because I want to see how much comes from Greenwich and how that's not going to come this year. Caller, you're on the air.
Yes, I have a quick question for the Senator, and then I'll get off.
Go right ahead.
The question: when the taxpayers are supporting these employees with their health insurance and everything, and we have co-pays where they're $30, $40, $50, and our prescription $20, $40. I got people that friends of mine that work for college in college. They tell me they pay $5, $3 co-pays. Why can't we address this somehow as a cost?
Excellent question. Thank you, caller.
Excellent point. Because, in fact, part of the problem of the state budget has to do with our legacy costs, our retirement cost for state employees, and it's very much like a GM problem. Think GM and Chrysler. Think GM and Chrysler. The caller, again, very astute. He's talked to someone that is a state employee. Our colleges, by the way, state colleges are state employees, and on our various departments. And he is absolutely right. Until just recently, when the governor did ask for some concessions on the part of the state employees and their unions, we had a state health care plan that included a $3 and $6 copay. $3 for generic, $6 for a retail brand. They also had a $15 copay for any doctor that they would go to. And that added to the fact that if you work there for 10 years and at a certain age, you can retire with 50% of your salary. That is a very rich, almost platinum plan. That has been renegotiated, but the renegotiation isn't as dramatic as we might think. It's not as commensurate with the private sector. I think part of the copay now is $5, $10, and $15. So it isn't as certainly...
The caller was talking about a $30 copay.
Yes, exactly. So that is exactly right. And oftentimes a private plan, you have to spend down $3,000 a year before your plan actually goes into action. My concern is that there's some proposals on this table to take that state plan, that very rich plan, and roll it out to the private sector and municipalities without accounting for how much that might cost municipalities. Because if the state can't absorb those costs, how are municipalities and other individuals going to be able to afford it as well, especially if the state highly subsidizes that for the public. Again, we are the payers of that in the end. And the cost is astronomical. Healthcare is one of the highest cost areas and highest growth in cost because we can't have quality and accessible and affordable all in the same sentence. If you want affordable, you're going to have restrict quality, it's going to have to go down, and you're going to have to restrict access. If you want quality, the affordability aspect of it is not going to be there for you. It's going to cost a lot of money.
A couple interesting facts. One is that for General Motors, they per sale of a car, more expenses go into the sale price of a car for health insurance for their employees and the retired employees than it costs to put steel in the car. I mean, it's incredible. This health insurance thing is just huge. I know in Ridgefield, the teachers union have an increase of like 3.5%. But when you add on to that their increase in their health insurance, all of a sudden their increase for their pay and benefits goes up 5.2%, which is pretty healthy, especially in this time.
There's no question that benefits are one of the largest aspects of both running a small business or a big business, and as a percentage of what they need to account for, and that has been going up dramatically. Some of the increase in cost is not just for the fact that we have these very rich benefits. We also have a problem in Connecticut across the board, even in private plans, because every year we add more mandates to what an insurance plan must cover. We had nearly 50 at the beginning of this year. After this legislative session, we are near 60 now. And our neighboring states have 20 various mandates. For example, a wig.
One second. So we have 50 and 60
Right.
mandated things that the insurance companies
Must
have to provide.
Correct.
And neighboring states have somewhere in the neighborhood of 20?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, and then add to that, we have a very high cost for medical malpractice insurance premiums for doctors, much higher than our surrounding states and much higher than nationally. So you add those two aspects together, it really drives up the cost of a plan, even if you're, and particularly for a small business person.
Yeah.
Now, this year, beyond the budget, which is our number one priority, our number one job that has not been completed.
Yes.
We also entertained some 3,000 bills, and we passed 250.
Really, do you know how the Cardinals do it when they have to choose a new pope?
Yes.
Do you?
Yeah.
They lock them
themselves
in.
up, and then
they lock them
there's
in the Sistine
yes,
Chapel.
They
Nice
do.
place to be locked
and
up.
then they have a smoke signal
That's
that comes
right.
out.
And they don't let
done.
them out until they have a new pope.
I think that would be a
Could we
grand
lock
idea.
the doors to the in Hartford to the Capitol, and you guys send up black smoke, nothing, black smoke. Then when the white smoke comes up, that means you guys have a budget.
Well, Marty, it would be much more productive than having various leaders of the House and Senate that have the majority going from town to town to protest this little cut or that other cut, rather than saying, okay, we're in control here, this is the plan, now let's work to get it passed.
All right, along those lines, we have, and we'll put it up on a graphic, I found a really incredible website. It's called ctbudgetfacts.com. ctbudgetfacts.com. Now, who's that state senator there, that fine young guy?
That is Dan DiSabella.
Dan DiSabella.
DiBasella, excuse me.
DiBasella.
Yes, Dan DiBasella. He represents a region around the Shelton area of Connecticut.
Okay.
And he's tried to create a site. We've actually been bringing this budget message from town to town. In fact, I've pretty much covered our district as well to just explain the budget.
Yeah.
Where does the money come from, and how is it spent?
And how does it start?
Exactly. And what are the 3 or 4 plans that are out there? And have the public really get engaged and involved, because it is their money.
Absolutely. So if you can put that up, Connecticut Budget or ctbudgetfacts.com. It's got a lot of good information. Caller, you're on the air.
Yes, you're just talking about the budget and trying to get approvals and stuff. And one point that I've wanted to bring up is Department of Children and Families sit there and they do a wonderful job. But recently, a friend of mine had taken in a foster care child that was of illegal immigrants.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. So okay.
And yet the parents didn't get deported, but yet we're still showing the bill.
All right.
Okay.
Good
now,
call.
very interesting
Thanks.
call. It would be interesting to note if the child was born in America or not,
Yeah.
and if, in fact, that usually puts states' services in a conundrum, because if they, in fact, were born in this country, they're considered American citizen, and then those rules would apply, and they could conceivably be in our foster care system.
Okay. Yeah. The issue of illegal immigration, I guess, has continued to be a hot issue
It
in
is,
these
of
tough
course.
economic times. One dynamic that I think I've noticed, and I know that there was a gentleman who had a building that rented, and he says a lot of people, it's a completely overgeneralization, but many immigrants from Brazil and Ecuador have simply moved back. Is that been?
Well, I've heard that as well, and that's always, I think, the immigration trends happen to follow where the job opportunities are. And if our job opportunities are being reduced, we're nearing 10% unemployment in this country. That's quite large. We haven't seen that in decades.
So they're kind of thinking, well, I can be poor back home as much as here. So in a way, that could be sorting itself out.
Sure.
Caller, you're on the air.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I was just on the phone speaking with you.
Yes.
I just wanted to tell you that, no, the family all came from Mexico 7 years ago.
Interesting.
Okay.
Well, it'd be interesting to know what that case is, and if, in fact, they know that this to be the case.
Yeah.
And it's actually her sister, her brother, and herself, all in foster care now.
Interesting.
I wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, I'm
All right,
glad
no,
that you
appreciate it.
did.
Didn't mean to cut you off.
Well, and it was another interesting point. I remember that we had a proposal in the fall to get the ball rolling and start to reduce the structurally high costs that we have. One of the ideas on the table that ultimately became a part of this concession package, but very, very late. But earlier in the fall, we did propose a early retirement incentive package, and we knew that there would be, out of 11,000 eligible, nearly 4,000 that might take us up on
Right.
it. I remember being stopped by a social services worker in one of our departments in the state, and she commented that she really wanted to take advantage of it, and why weren't they passing it? And then she also brought out the fact that you know that they don't have a retirement agent, that she was working with a number of individuals that could be 70, 75, one that was 80 years old. And she was concerned because they weren't necessarily doing the work that, and a lot of the work was falling on her shoulders. So she had some complaints to make, and I thought about that for a moment, and it seemed highly unusual, but that's what you get as far as the bargaining units might negotiate down the road, and some of those things should maybe be revisited at this particular point in time.
All right, well, I'll tell you, in private business, if you have 3,000 or 4,000 employees that can be cut with no, loss in service, you cut them. That has been going on. Everyone who's listening to me right now on television knows that people are doing more with less. They're doing more with less in their family budget. They're doing kitchen table discussions where they're coming up with savings, and I know they're doing more with less in the private sector. They're just finding a way to do it. It seems like everyone is tightening their belt, yet in Hartford, one particular group, that being the majority, has not seen clear to do that. We're going to take a break. Before we do, here's a couple thoughts. One from George Bernard Shaw. A government which robs Peter and pays Paul can always depend on the support of Paul. Government is the great fiction through which everyone endeavors to live at the expense of everyone else. That was some French guy named Frederick. If you think healthcare is expensive now, wait until you see what it costs when it's free. That's the great intellectual P.J. O'Rourke. And then this is what I'm beginning to think is going on a bit in Hartford. Government is like a baby's alimentary canal, with a happy appetite at one end and no responsibility at the other. That, my friends, was our beloved President Ronald Reagan. We're going to take a break right now, and we are going to hear from Jim Masters and Austin Greenfield. They've been gone, but they're tanned, rested, and ready, and they're back, and they're going to bring us some interesting news and weather, and then we'll be back with State Senator Toni Boucher. It's a rainy night. NBA Finals are over. Pittsburgh Penguins have won the Stanley Cup. There's really nothing on TV, American Idols. So you stay right there and come back with State Senator Toni Boucher, and we'll be back in just a minute.
Now, from the studios of Comcast Channel 23, this is a news update with anchors Austin Greenfield and Jim Masters. The latest news, sports, and weather from around the entire greater Danbury region. And now, Austin Greenfield and Jim Masters.
And hello, everyone, and welcome to this segment of News and Weather. I am weathercaster Austin Greenfield alongside newscaster Jim Masters, and I will have your weather in just a bit. But first, Jim, what does the news shape up to be?
Lots going on in the area, and we'll talk about that rain coming up. We have so much rain happening. Thanks for joining us. In Brookfield, the director of Newtown's finance department has been hired to work as the town's temporary controller up to 20 hours per week during the search for former controller Michael Belden's replacement. Belden resigned abruptly last week after 6 months on the job. First Selectman Robert Silvaghi announced the temporary replacement from Newtown, Robert Tate, during a special meeting of the Board of Selectmen Thursday morning. They said, Silvaghi says, we have a temporary controller from Newtown who's been working up to 20 hours per week, depending on his availability, while the process of looking for a new controller is in place. In Ridgefield, the Children's Corner, a child care center that leases space at Barlow Mountain School, can stay at the school at least until September. School leaders went to the Board of Selectmen's meeting Wednesday out of fear that their lease would expire by month's end. But the selectmen assured that the lease is good through the summer. The Children's Corner leases about 10,000 square feet of space at Barlow Mountain School. It offers a wide array of programs to children from the ages of 6 weeks to 12 years old, including preschool and after-school programs. And because of declining enrollment in the town's elementary schools, a committee is now considering how best to realign and consolidate school space, and that may affect the Children's Corner's future. And in Newtown, a former Newtown letter carrier was sentenced to 6 months of home confinement and 3 months of probation for stealing a $50 gift card from the mail last year. George Colon, 54 years old, of Waterbury, Connecticut, a 23-year employee of the United States Postal Service, was charged as a result of an investigation that began last fall after the Newtown postmaster received complaints from people whose mail had been delivered, opened, or damaged. Postal inspectors installed a surveillance camera in his truck between October 15th and November 17th. Colon was seen operating and opening 79 pieces of mail during that time, searching mainly for greeting cards that might contain cash, according to federal prosecutors. He resealed the envelopes with a sticker indicating they had been damaged in transit. Colon was arrested after he took a Target gift card from an envelope that investigators planted in his mail. He pleaded guilty to a single count of mail theft in March. That's the latest going on in the area there. We've had a lot of rain, Austin. Tremendous. I'm looking for Noah and his ark lately.
Yeah, a lot of rain indeed. And
is it going to stay?
Well, the rain's going to stay at least through the weekend, and then still a chance of showers into early next week. But temperatures will be on the rise. More summer-like temperatures for the mid-portion of next week.
Terrific.
Taking a look at the forecast for tonight, showers not as heavy as we've been seeing earlier in the afternoon, but still some lighter showers. They'll be ending early in the overnight period, probably a little bit after midnight, so the remainder of the night should stay dry. We'll see lows in the upper 50s to near 60 degrees. The day on Friday, morning showers probably ending early in the morning, maybe 9, 10 o'clock, and the rest of the day should stay mostly cloudy. We'll see highs in the upper 70s, so not a bad turnout for you the day on Friday. High temperatures in the upper 70s. Friday night, chance of showers, mainly after the 9 o'clock hour. Some patchy fog will be developing as well. Otherwise, any mostly cloudy skies will see lows in the lower 60s. Then Saturday, another round of showers. Showers likely, maybe a thunderstorm. Some of the rain could be heavy at times, so definitely want to get out those umbrellas. We'll see high temperatures in the lower to mid 70s. Saturday night, more showers, maybe a thunderstorm. Sunday, the showers will be winding down. Expect mostly cloudy skies. We'll see highs in the lower 70s. Then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, still a chance of showers, mostly to partly sunny skies. We'll see temperatures creeping up toward the 80-degree mark by Tuesday. Then Wednesday and Thursday, we'll see highs in the lower 80s. So definitely, Jim, a more return to summer-like weather.
Fantastic. So a little rain here and there, but the warmer weather's coming back.
That's right.
That's good to hear. Well, that's our report for Comcast Channel 23 News Update. For Austin Greenfield, I'm Jim Masters. Thanks for watching. Much more of Ideas at Work and Beyond coming right up, so stay right there.
You know, I love these verses from Abraham Lincoln, or attributed to him. He may have been a Presbyterian minister. You cannot bring about prosperity by discouraging thrift. You cannot strengthen the weak by weakening the strong. You cannot help the poor man by destroying the rich. You cannot further the brotherhood of man by inciting class hatred. You cannot build character and courage by taking away a man's initiative and independence. You cannot help small men by tearing down big men. You cannot lift the wage earner by pulling down the wage payer. You cannot keep out of trouble by spending more than your income. You cannot establish security on borrowed money. And you cannot help men permanently by doing for them what they will not do for themselves. And State Senator Toni Boucher, who's our guest this evening, also has a quote from Booker T. Washington.
I do. I have been reading Up from Slavery on my trips up and down to Hartford on Books on Tape, and his main message in this book is so powerful, and it's true today as it was in 1901. And what he said basically is the best prospects for our people are education, industriousness, and self-reliance. He believed in creating his school, the Tuskegee Institute. He believed that he needed to teach his students not only the classics of Greece, but also how to build that table and that chair that they were sitting in so that they had a marketable trade if they ever needed to make a living.
Wow. Booker T. Washington.
Booker T. Washington.
A famous American. I think Teddy Roosevelt was the first one that had him to the White House for dinner, as I recall.
Absolutely. An amazing man. I was so inspired by reading that book.
Okay. We're just going over real quick just the raw numbers. I find it fascinating. Okay, you look at it as a 2-year budget, $36 billion.
That's right.
And go through some of those percentages that you were talking about.
Well,
caller, just hold the line 1 second.
That 2-year budget, the basic revenues comes from about a quarter of our state. Fairfield County, actually, 898,000 people out of 3.4 million pay pay nearly half of the state taxes. It does. And additionally, when people say, well, they're not paying their fair share enough, they should recognize that those making $100,000 or more in Connecticut pay nearly 80% of all of our taxes or provide the tax revenues, and those making $35,000 or less pay virtually no state income tax.
Wow. Caller, are you 100,000 or more or 35,000 or less? Or is it really none of my darn business?
Darn.
Caller.
Hello.
Yeah, I was wondering, do you make more than $100,000 a year or less than 35, or is it really none of my business?
It's none of your business.
All right. I was just asking.
Okay. I was at HEFCO this morning, and I heard a very interesting happened in Hartford. There is a foreclosure.
Go right ahead. You said there was a foreclosure?
Yeah, you passed the bill that if people realize, meaning the state passed the bill, that if people realize they're going into foreclosure, they have to register with the state at the cost of $100.
Yes, that's a very good point. There was a bill that was passed.
Just to make clear, because we're having a little technical, but there's a bill about foreclosure. Go ahead.
About foreclosing mortgages, and for you to apply for this program, it will cost you $100. And there's been some complaints, rightfully so, that most people in foreclosure don't have the extra money. That's why they're going into foreclosure. So there is an issue there that the caller rightfully pointed out. And in fact, I have a whole litany of bills that were passed that would be interesting.
Caller, was that your question?
Basically, yes. I didn't know if the banks had to pay it or if homeowners had to.
The individual.
The applicant.
So just for those of you scoring at home, hello, I'm a citizen, I'm stone broke, I don't have any money, well, it'll cost you $100 to go into foreclosure.
Right.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate the call. What are some of the other bills that you have?
Well, let me tell you, and I'm going to go through it very briefly, and then maybe some of the listeners might want to talk a little bit more about each of these. But again, about 250 bills paid, and I'm going to briefly go over. We actually passed a bill regarding same-sex couples. That was because there was a state constitution. There was actually that particular bill, same-sex marriage, was brought to the state Supreme Court, and they ruled that our civil union bill or law was unconstitutional. It was not equal rights. So essentially it created the same-sex marriage issue for Connecticut, and there was legislation passed to sort of implement that legislation, along with, by the way, an amendment to protect the Catholic Church and other religious institutions.
Yeah, you had a little. Next week I'm having Monsignor Bronkowitz from Ridgefield on talking about that. It would seem like with the state budgets not being passed and so forth, you could leave the Catholic Church alone for a little bit.
Well, there was a lot of controversy around the Catholic Church. We could spend an entire show just on that.
Well, we are next week.
Well, I'm glad to hear it.
Monsignor will be here.
In addition, they tried to pass a bill to eliminate capital punishment or the death penalty in Connecticut. That was passed. The governor vetoed it, so death penalty still is existing. We passed a bill concerning a pet lemon law. We also passed a bill to create a pet trust. We passed a bill prohibiting potentially dangerous animals such as the chimpanzee that we had such a problem with. There was an act concerning green jobs, regionalism, brownfields. There was one creating a bill about green cleaning products in schools. There was also those that there was a bill to apologize for slavery in Connecticut that passed both houses and I believe signed by the governor. One prohibiting the transfer of machine guns to minors so that they can't even hold them because of an incident that occurred. There were a couple of large health care bills that passed. Another one concerning the long-term use of antibiotics for Lyme's disease. One concerning autism. Another one making sure that there was an automatic external defibrillator in schools in case something should happen. There's a controversial bill. It shouldn't be controversial, but it is, requiring those large franchised fast food stores to post the calorie count of their products in there. There was also an interesting bill concerning blocking the box. And some of the other ones that are kind of funny was the ability to import which did not pass, the importation of reindeer for Christmas fairs and so forth. That was amazing.
Vital issue.
A vital issue. Instead of course.
So just not to cut off this list, but you're saying time was found to limit the import of reindeer, yet it wasn't found to decide if there was going to be a state budget going forward.
This is
and the
one
direction that we're going to go in as a state.
Exactly. In fact, there were a number of other interesting bills like that a great deal of time was spent on, and whether we should import or allow the importation of reindeer or not, versus the most important, the number one, I think, priority and job that we have, and that is passing a $36 billion state budget over the next 2 years. In addition to that, we also had a $1 billion shortfall in this year's budget.
So just so we're clear, reindeers, they got discussed, deliberated, everyone in their enlightened self-interest voted, and that was passed. $36 billion in a state budget was not.
Right. We also had quite a debate on the regulation of hedge funds. You know, there's a lot of hedge funds. I just mentioned the fact that our economy in Connecticut is not diversified in all. So as the fortunes of Wall Street go up or they go down, so do our state revenues.
Yeah, you were saying 46%, or hold on. 46, maybe as high as 48% of the state income tax comes from Fairfield County.
It does.
What percent of that comes from the one town of Greenwich, Connecticut?
Greenwich provides the largest tax revenue, about $800 million.
$800 million?
Yes, so it's just under $1 billion comes from Greenwich.
And that's annually?
That's annually. And in Greenwich, you know, that is where the largest percentages of hedge fund companies are located.
And what have you noticed as far as that revenue stream, if you want to look at it that way?
It's been, of course, dramatically reduced, up to 20 to 30% down. And that's significant to our state revenues. And quite frankly, nobody disagrees that there should be more regulation of certain investment products. The problem that we had with it is that Connecticut should not be the only state that does that. It should be done on a national level so we don't create negative competition for us, because in Greenwich, of course, all they need is to pick up their computers and their staff and walk across the street across the New York state line and relocate there, and thereby they would get the tax revenues off of the bonuses, the capital gains, and so on. Just
to outline some of what the state senator is saying, again, 48% of state revenues are coming from Fairfield County. Of that, $800 million is coming from one town alone, that being Greenwich. Incredibly adversely affected by the downfall on Wall Street, and those jobs and that revenue are not coming back. My fellow citizens of Connecticut, it's a new day. I think we all need to realize the gravy train has come to a screeching halt here. We don't have as much money coming in. That's it. You know, in your families, when you decide if you've got a cut in pay, if bonuses aren't coming in as much as they used to in the past, you cut. You make allowances for that. Maybe you do a staycation, not a vacation. Maybe, you know, it was interesting. Today I had lunch across the street from a shoe repair shop. I personally had shoes repaired rather than just buying new shoes. That's not necessarily great for the whole economy. We'd like to have everyone buy new shoes all the time, but the fact is that Americans have always been very resourceful in economic downturns like this. Individually, we almost instinctively know what to do. You drive the car one more year, you look for savings wherever you can find them. As towns and municipalities, as the state senator says, there's 7 in your district,
Yes.
They're doing that. They're trimming their budgets. They're going to the police, the fire, even the custodial unions and asking for that. In our town, the first selectman, the superintendent of schools, and every salaried person had a no increase in their pay. It was a salary freeze. That's what you do. State legislatures in Hartford, if you're listening, please hear. Revenues are down. You need to quit spending so much money. Sign this budget. The governor's budget seems reasonable. No tax increases. Rolling back some of these bureaucracies, bloated bureaucracies, as she talks about. Cutting back on or eliminating close to 24 agencies and commissions. It can be done. It needs to be done. If you keep spending money like drunken sailors with revenues down like we're talking about here, it's not going to bode well for the future of Connecticut. So it shouldn't be that hard to do. Quinnipiac polls have said that the overwhelming majority of voters in Connecticut are against increasing taxes and increasing spending, especially in these economic times. That's my thinking on it. I have the state senator right here. She knows these numbers backwards and forwards. Am I saying the right thing?
You're right on target. You're right on target, and I will continue to send that message and bring that message with me in Hartford on the floor of the Senate. You can be certain.
All right, now where do we go from here? We have about 5 minutes left or thereabouts. Politically speaking, people don't, like I was describing before, people have busy lives, they're doing a lot of different things. How the heck do you guys run this railroad in Hartford? What do you need to do? How is this budget going to be passed, and where do you see it unfolding?
Well, I think that it is incredibly important for the public to continue to stay engaged. They've never been as engaged as I've seen it in a long time as this year.
They are. They're really
very involved. They understand. They also see what's happening at the federal level. And a lot of that is happening here in Connecticut as well. The difference is that we have a governor with a different point of view. There is that natural tension between those points of view, which is healthy. But she needs the public to weigh in. It's so important for them to either write or call any of us and her, but particularly the leadership, both in the House and Senate. They're the ones that really need to hear from the public, because they are really now in the driver's seat of this train.
I think sometimes the average voter out there underestimates the power that they actually have.
Well, let me give
if you pick up the phone and call your state representative, it's pretty easy. Google is a beautiful thing. Just go to state legislature, Connecticut, go into your district, fine. You'll get his website, you'll get his email address, you'll get his phone number, and call. And say, you know what, this spending is out of control. Don't you dare raise my taxes. I'm barely being able to make ends meet right now. And pass a budget that has no tax increase, no cut in benefits to education in the towns, and trims a bloated government. It's not that complicated. And I bet if people did pick up their phones and call their legislature, they would respond.
I absolutely agree. We can see that just by watching what happened with the Catholic Church and the bill.
Oh, they turned so fast it makes your head spin.
Well,
they turned before the mob had time to form, so they just kind of got the protest together just to have it, even though what they wanted to have happen happened.
Well, quite frankly, there were thousands of people that showed up in Hartford, and I might add, it was not a mob. It was a very respectful, very quiet
mob
group
was
of
a wrong
people.
term. It was a
wonderfully respectful, well-reasoned group that talked very deliberately about their point of view. But the sheer numbers was all that it took. It didn't need a lot of strong rhetoric, quite frankly, although they did make some very strong cases. But just their mere presence there, and they filled the legislature.
For the Catholic Church, I misspoke. I didn't mean mob. By that I meant a group of protesters.
Right.
They actually formed and had a protest in Hartford, but the politicians, having seen the reaction of the electorate, had long since withheld what they were trying to do.
The numbers really were effective, and I think if people could see that this is just as important, if not more important, it is just as important. It is about quite frankly, I believe that this budget year is going to be just as significant to the long-term prospects of the state as 1991 was when we enacted the state income tax. We've had a dramatic change since those days. We've lost population, we've lost jobs. Our growth has really gotten flat because people now are voting with their feet. We saw that again when the estate tax was reintroduced in 2005, when we were slowly getting rid of that because we didn't want to lose our seniors to other states. And so that policy was being changed. As soon as it was reinstituted, now we've seen a very dramatic change and reduction. Do you know the only state that's growing in the Northeast is New Hampshire? And New Hampshire does not have a state income tax. So if you're going to stay in the Northeast, many people that want to hang on to the bulk of their income as they retire will move there. And with that comes the jobs. But states that are getting a lot of Connecticut residents are Florida, and you wouldn't believe this, but Texas. Texas has become the new Florida because it's even less expensive for housing and so forth.
New Hampshire, the state motto?
Live free or die.
Live free or die. I think that's probably a good thing that we need to return to. You know, you talk about tea parties. They've had these tea parties now. In 1991, that was when I first moved to Connecticut, I was in Hartford with Lowell Weicker, that dreaded rhino. You know what that means, right? Sure. Rich Republican in name only. Raised the income taxes. We had a tea party then, and unfortunately there was no avail. They unloaded, or they started a state income tax. Prior to that, Connecticut did not have a state income tax. But that was a tea party that happened in 1991. We need to have something similar now. It really is a turning point. You know, I was down in South Carolina just last weekend, flew in there, and they have a absolutely gorgeous BMW factory and plant down there. Oh, they do. It's a tale of two cities. Now, fly into Detroit and see what's going on at some of those GM plants and Chrysler plants. Basically, as corporations, their expenses got away from them. They just kept getting more and more bloated. And yes, they're producing wonderful cars, but it was unsustainable. Let's not have the state of Connecticut get into that situation where we just look and say, well, we have to constantly feed this beast and feed Hartford and feed Hartford. Well, what the heck? Let them eat cake. Let's just raise taxes again. We can't have that. And if you will take the time to get on the phone and call your state legislature or call your state senator, just Google it. You can find them. You can find their phone numbers. Give them a call. Now is the time, because this is going to make or break this state, and it's all going to unfold within the next 3 or 4 weeks. Is that accurate to say?
Wait, let's hope so.
All right. Otherwise, it's just the governor gets a checkbook out of her purse and just starts writing checks on a month-to-month basis.
But Marty, you made such an excellent point. The point
I did?
Yes.
Oh, good.
The point that is so powerful is that tax policy is driving the state's economy. Yeah. You know, I grew up in Connecticut and have been here over 43 years. So for the bulk of that, we did not have a state income tax. But a cumulative taxing policy can have a very negative impact on state jobs. And those jobs, if they are reduced, also involves the loss of our 18 to 34-year-old, the labor pool that is most attractive for us to keep here.
Absolutely. Connecticut is by far the most beautiful state. It's a great state. It's a great place to raise a family. It's the same reason that everyone who's here is living here. It's a beautiful state, and we want to keep it that way. We want it to be affordable. I have a 22-year-old daughter, a 20-year-old son, and a 16-year-old daughter. And we're joking with them. We're saying you can live wherever you want as long as it's within 30 miles of here, because we want to see the grandkids. I might be getting ahead of myself.
Oh, no, I'm right where you are.
All right, but I want the state to be affordable so they can stay here.
Absolutely.
I want to thank very much State Representative Toni Boucher. It's been a long day. I know you went to some train track somewhere.
Transportation meeting.
And you're up in Hartford, and you're battling, and unions and everything. Thank you so much for coming in. And for those of you who called in, I hope it helped, and I hope you'll join us next week when we're going to have Monsignor Bronkowitz from St. Mary's Parish in Ridgefield. The following week, we're going to have former Congressman Rob Simmons, who's mounting a campaign against Senator Dodd. And then for the following 3 or 4 weeks, Al Robinson, the editor, the creator, the czar of Hat City Blogs, will be coming in with a series of programs, maybe giving the other side of the coin in Hartford and otherwhere. So join in for that, and then coming back in July and August, we'll have some exciting remote shots. So thanks for joining us on Ideas of Work and Beyond. Again, thank you, Toni Boucher, and we'll see you here next week.